Imagine the scene. The year is, let's say, 1750. The sun has bled out over the Golden Horn, leaving the sky a deep, bruised purple. Constantinople, or Istanbul as we now know it, is settling into its nightly rhythm. The call to prayer has faded, its echoes absorbed by the ancient stone walls. The cypress trees stand like silent sentinels in the graveyards. The air begins to cool, thick with roasted chestnuts, charcoal smoke, the salty tang of the Bosphorus. Most of the city's respectable folk are shuttering their windows, retreating into the private domestic world of their households. But this is not the end of the day. For some, it is just the beginning. Listen closely. Can you hear it? Beyond the clatter of a late-night coffee house and the distant barking of a stray dog, there's another sound, a whisper on the breeze, a rustle of silk in a darkened alleyway, the low murmur of men's voices, hushed and conspiratorial, the city's secret life stirring. In the labyrinthine lanes of Galata, across the water from the old city, lanterns flicker to life. They cast long dancing shadows that hide as much as they reveal. Picture a grand, slightly faded wooden house tucked away in Galata or Pera. Exterior like a wealthy merchant's home. Enclosed upper-story balcony, a kumba, intricately carved latticework screens, mashrabiyah. They allowed the women inside to see out, but outsiders could not see in. Anonymity preserved. Step inside. The air is heavy, almost thick enough to taste. Sweet, cloying perfume. Spicy incense burning in a brass censer. The faint, bitter aroma of strong Turkish coffee. The floors are not bare and cold. Persian carpet close-up, Anatolian carpet close-up, low divans line the walls. Silk cushions piled high. Jewel tones, ruby, jewel tones, sapphire, jewel tones, emerald. Colored glass lanterns hang from the ceiling, filtering the light. The warm, flattering glow makes everyone look a little more beautiful, a little more mysterious. This was a stage, carefully set to transport the client. So who were the people who populated this hidden world? The cast of characters was as diverse as the empire itself. Let's start with the clients. Drunken sailors, lonely soldiers, though there were certainly plenty of those. The patrons of the more upscale houses were men of considerable standing and wealth. High-ranking government officials, wealthy merchants. Ships on the Golden Horn visiting diplomats from Venice, visiting diplomats from France, princes' viziers. For these men, a visit to a brothel was a discreet escape from rigid social codes and marital duties. Then there were the workers, the women at the heart of this trade. Their stories were varied and often tragic. Greeks, Armenians, Jews, Europeans, freeborn Muslim women were officially forbidden from enslavement or prostitution, though that rule was not always followed. Some were slaves, captured in wars, purchased in markets. Others were free women driven into the trade by poverty debt, the loss of a husband, the loss of a father. A widow with no family had terrifyingly few options. For some, prostitution was a desperate last resort to avoid starvation. Presiding over this operation was the brothel owner, the kerhaneci. The law's uneasy gaze. How did the Ottoman state, an empire founded on and governed by Islamic law, Sharia, deal with something so explicitly forbidden? The official position was, of course, one of stern condemnation. Prostitution, or zina, unlawful sexual intercourse, was a serious sin and a crime. Religious texts and legal opinions were crystal clear. From a purely legalistic standpoint, brothels should not have existed at all. The authorities, from the local judge, the Qadi, to the Sultan himself, periodically launched crackdowns. They would raid brothels. They would arrest the women and their clients. They would hand out punishments. These punishments could be severe. And yet, the brothels persisted. Why? Because the official, uncompromising stance of the law ran up against messy human reality. The authorities practiced a kind of pragmatic tolerance. They knew a city teeming with soldiers, sailors, merchants, unmarried men had certain needs. So, an unofficial system of regulation emerged. It was based not on written laws but on bribes and informal agreements. Brothel owners paid a regular, unofficial tax to the local authorities. It was a classic protection racket, but it worked. Let's get specific. To truly understand the business, we need to meet one of its most famous practitioners. Her name was Angelica, and in the mid-19th century, she was the undisputed queen of Galata's underworld. Angelica, a Greek woman of formidable intelligence and business acumen, ran the most luxurious and exclusive brothel in all of Istanbul. Her establishment was no mere house of ill repute. It was a palace of pleasure, renowned throughout the empire and even among the European diplomats who frequented the capital. Her story gives us a juicy, detailed glimpse into the sheer scale and sophistication of this illicit trade. Madame Angelica's success was built on two pillars: impeccable service and absolute discretion. She understood her clients' desires better than they did themselves. Her house was decorated with the finest furnishings money could buy: silk curtains from Bursa, crystal chandeliers from Bohemia, plush carpets that silenced every footstep. She employed not just beautiful women, but women who were accomplished musicians, dancers, and conversationalists. A visit to Angelica's was an entire evening's entertainment. For the most part, the world of the brothels and the world of the imperial court were kept strictly separate. A veil of secrecy and plausible deniability was essential, but sometimes that veil was torn. One of the most scandalous episodes involved a high-ranking pasha during the reign of Sultan Abdülmecid I. This pasha, known for public piety and stern moral pronouncements, was secretly a regular patron of one of Galata's most expensive houses. He became infatuated with a particular woman there, a beautiful Circassian dancer. The affair became an obsession. He showered her with lavish gifts, jewels, silks, and even a small villa. He was spending a fortune, dipping into funds not entirely his own. His behavior grew reckless. He disappeared for days, neglecting official duties at the palace. Rivals at court sensed weakness and began to watch him. They paid informants, followed his movements, tracked nightly crossings of the Golden Horn. No discussion of Ottoman nightlife would be complete without mentioning the Janissaries. For centuries, this elite infantry corps was the backbone of the Sultan's army and a powerful, often volatile force within Istanbul itself. Stationed in sprawling barracks throughout the city, these soldiers were, in theory, supposed to lead celibate lives dedicated to the state. They were technically slaves of the Sultan and were forbidden to marry. This created a large population of young, aggressive men with money in their pockets and a great deal of idle time when not on campaign. Naturally, they became the primary customers of a whole class of brothels and taverns, particularly in the rougher districts near the city walls and along the waterfront. The relationship between the Janissaries and the city's sex trade was symbiotic. The soldiers provided a constant stream of revenue, and the brothels provided an outlet for their energies that might otherwise have exploded into mutiny or public rioting. The taverns, or meyhanes, often run by Greeks or Armenians, were central to this subculture. The 19th century was a period of immense change for the Ottoman Empire. Facing military defeats and pressure from European powers, the sultans embarked on a series of sweeping reforms known as the Tanzimat. The goal was to modernize the state, the army society, along Western lines. This wave of modernization washed over the hidden world of prostitution, transforming it from a system of informal bribes and secret tolerance into a matter of public health and state regulation. The old, shadowy system was about to be dragged into the light. The driving force behind this change was the spread of venereal disease, particularly syphilis. The new, modern Ottoman army, the navy, were being ravaged by STIs, a serious threat to military readiness. European doctors working in Istanbul convinced the Ottoman government the only way to control the spread was to adopt the European model of regulated prostitution. This meant identifying brothels, registering the women who worked in them, and subjecting them to mandatory weekly health inspections. The Ottoman Empire is long gone, but its secret history still echoes in the streets of modern Istanbul. Galata, once the heart of illicit nightlife, Galata today, cafes, shops, bohemian crowds. State-regulated brothels, genelevs, were set up in the late Ottoman era. They continued into the Turkish Republic, and a modified system survives today. The vesika, the official registration card for prostitutes, a direct legacy of 19th century reforms. The past is never truly past, not just juicy scandals, it's a more complete human picture. History isn't only sultans, wars, treaties, it's about ordinary lives, extraordinary lives on the margins. Madame Angelica, nameless dancers, servants. These stories reveal power, gender, survival. They expose the gap between official morality and private behavior, a familiar hypocrisy. Women silenced in records yet possessing agency, resilience, stories of their own.